Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 2nd, Haldane Board of Education business meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Clemens
Here.
Vice President Valentine here, Trustee McNall
Here.
Trustee Cupper here, Trustee Clemenson.
Here.
Okay, so the agenda is set. I don't think we need to add anything. So may we have the recommended action to approve the agenda, please?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as written.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So comments from me, very brief. I want to thank Dr. Duffy for inviting us and some of the folks from our supporting organizations to join the opening session of the first day of the Teacher PD on Wednesday, the opening school professional learning days. And it was great to get to be there. It was great to see everybody together. It was a really great opening session with really good energy, and I appreciated being there. So, and I heard the rest of the day and the next day went well as well.
Sure did.
Yes. So over to you.
Okay. What a great first day. I've been looking forward to this day since I started in Haldane in terms of having students and staff and the energy back in the building. So from the beginning until the end, it was just a fabulous day. Starting off with our high schoolers coming out, kind of still waking up as they were standing outside, getting ready to go in. Little talk about cell phones and things, but everyone really followed the procedures beautifully. A couple questions were able to be answered. Julia was able to go into all of the, I believe it was the social studies classes to talk about goal setting for the year and really setting the tone. So I had the chance to see her in one of the classes. Marianne was doing grade level meetings on just culture and norms within the middle school. So it was great to get in and see that. And Christine, if you've all seen opening day, she had the big blue balloon arch that said start. I felt like it was like a race on your mark, set, go, and kids were coming into the building. So lots of super excitement. And our pre-K started today. So we had our 18 students join, which was wonderful. I had the chance to visit in classrooms. I helped a little bit with lockers. I found the health room, so I brought a student there. And one other classroom, I may or may not have gotten the right hallway, but we figured it out together. So it was a great way to start. I had a chance to get out to the blacktop at dismissal. So it was great to see all different parents and guardians there picking up their children. On a side note, we had our first varsity boys soccer, and I believe the score was 0-0 from what I'm hearing. JV did win 5-1 against Henrik Hudson, which is exciting. And then also it was just all hands on deck. So every administrator was out today lending support, which was great to see. What else? Curriculum nights are starting next week. So I believe we have middle school next Thursday. I will be at each of the start of the curriculum nights along with Peggy to kind of be available to talk with parents about the capital project. And we'll have an updated poster that will show maybe a little bit of change from the community first voted on the project, but just any updates that we can provide as the school year unfolds. And so I'll also be staying at each curriculum night to say hello to parents, and I'll make myself available as the year goes on. I think that was everything to start. So anyway, great opening and thrilled to be here. I'm really grateful for the community.
That's
Awesome.
exciting. Okay, so we don't have a special presentation today, so it's actually the opportunity for our first communication from the public. So this would be focused on special presentations and agenda items. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. This first public comment session is reserved for comments on any special presentations or active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, we'd ask you to sign in and state your name. Keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less, and to avoid disparaging remarks or discussions of personnel. Next on our agenda are our information reports, right, for our next business meeting. And then after that, we move into consent agenda minutes for our last meeting, our meeting last week. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next is consent agenda financial. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
And I don't think there's really anything here worth calling out, just very, very standard stuff. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And next is consent agenda personnel. May we have a motion?
Second.
Here again. Some standard things, I don't think, unless there's anything you wanna call out.
I could speak briefly on facilities and
That would be great.
transportation.
Yes.
So as we know, Adam McNeil will be finishing up his time with us next Friday, and he's done a really nice job the past 2 years here serving in that capacity. And so we're really looking at this as an opportunity to take a look at facilities and transportation. We have to follow the regular civil service for hiring. That takes a little bit of time. We have to canvass the state list. There's about 200 applicants that could express an interest. So we do have to kind of go through the motions there. In the meantime, we would like to appoint tonight an interim director, and that's David Roberton, and he's coming from, he retired most recently from Dobbs Ferry, but he has many years as a experienced in this role, so very familiar with the role and managing people. And then I'm also looking at transportation through a different lens. It's a little challenging to be able to find a director of facilities that has both expertise in facilities and transportation. And so in talking with our vendor who's going to be doing the transportation study, he actually recommended our consultant tonight, Elizabeth, who will be joining us. And she is most recently from Henrik Hudson and has many years under her belt as director of transportation. So the plan is not to hire 2 full-time people moving forward. It's really to have David come in as our full-time director of facilities interim basis, and then have Elizabeth come in more as a consultant a couple days a week to really assess what is working really well with transportation, what are some areas that we can improve upon, and also to provide mentoring to our interim director. So again, I'm really mindful of anyone new that we bring in, knowing that it's hard to have expertise in both areas. How can we really set the next person up for success? So that's our plan. And those are the 2 people, and they'll start next week.
And these are, just to build on what Dr. Duffy said, these are really very important years for both facilities and transportation. So facilities, because obviously we're in the throes of getting our big capital project up and running. So the idea of having a very skilled and experienced, or I should say experienced, I don't know, I assume skilled, but definitely very experienced interim director of facilities is really critically important, right, for the few months. And also the board had set before really, I think any of this, we knew there was going to be this transition of really wanting to get a better handle on transportation. This is especially important given the need to transition, the need and desire to transition to electric buses, and to do so in a way so that we really know what are our transportation needs, since this is a big investment on the part of the district. So I think having both folks for this period of time, I appreciate you thinking of it. Sure. So that's that. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to ask or say?
I was just say I'm always looking to see who's joining our substitute teacher pool. It's interesting to see who's raising their hand, and I always appreciate it when it's someone who's like, oh, there's a recent retiree who's stepping up and stepping forward, and I just appreciate that there are people who are qualified to do it.
That's great. Thanks for noting. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. So unfinished business. Last time we looked at the workshop topics we had on our meeting agenda last week to look at the workshop topics for the year. And so now the plan is to approve them. Oh, all right, so may we have the recommended action, please?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the workshop topics as presented.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I guess actually I should have said this before we vote. I mean, there are some really exciting agenda workshops coming up. An important one being next week, an update on the capital project, but really a great slate of workshops, and they're always really very informative. So now moving into new business, which is a discussion about the district goals. We'll have a
We have a couple slides on them. I'll stand so I'm not in the
what?
Oh, I have a clicker. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So these are the draft goals that the board has already seen. And we also had an opportunity during opening day with staff to just give them an overview. So the first one is advancing the capital improvement projects. This is carried over obviously from last year. And so what's exciting about this is we are continuing the planning process. And my goal as your new superintendent is to make sure we are transparent about our communication and also providing frequent updates of whatever. And so what I said to the staff last week is, even though the community voted on this almost last November, there's been a lot of behind the scenes work taking place. So if you've been a member of one of the committees planning, or if you've been a member of sitting on the owners meeting where we meet every other week with both the construction manager as well as our architects, you would see behind the scenes. And so we're continuing this work. Our plan this year, you might notice a little Haldane hard hat on our mascot there. We're going to be providing these frequent updates of where things are with the capital project, kind of envisioning that at some point we'll have staff included in the conversations as well as students sharing their excitement for what's to come. So we will be continuing with this goal. And our next board meeting will have an update from CS Arch and Palumbo on where we're at. And then we'll also be including STEAM on that night as well. So this will be an ongoing, we're excited about it. And it's definitely one of our top goals for the year. So the second one ties in nicely. This is developing, and we had the chance to add pre-K. So it's now pre-K through 12 STEAM program. And what we're doing here is really continuing on. There's such a strong foundation and an excitement around STEAM. There's been a lot of discussions well before I got here in terms of project-based learning and different ways to engage students. And so we're continuing those conversations. I had the chance to meet with the administrative team last week to really review the presentation that was developed for last June. That board meeting, that presentation was put on hold. And so that'll be at the next presentation, our next board meeting. And Julia really took a beautiful lead in putting together that presentation along with Josh for us. So we reviewed it as a team. And then we identified, one of my always wonderings with something new is the connection to current curriculum, like current classes that we're teaching. But then as exciting and as important, where are those new opportunities for students? And so this ties beautifully into our work with the Portrait of a Graduate and the Haldane Essentials. But this will be a full year of planning for what these spaces will look like. Part of the planning will be now talking with a group of teachers who are interested in being part of that process. And students, I can't wait to sit down with students of all ages and get a sense from them. What does STEAM mean? Where are there already connections to the content and curriculum that they're learning? And again, as exciting, where are these new opportunities? Also looking at our local community and resources. So as we know, we live in such a beautiful area where we can tap into the outdoor environment, but then also local community members and things like that. So really looking forward to being able to provide the board some updates throughout the year with us. All right, that's number 2. Number 3, I know this is a long time coming for lots of people, really looking at how we have our grades structured in each of our buildings. And so again, this was started well before me, but the goal is to have this in place by the end of this school year. So going into 26, 27, we're ready to go. So again, we met as an administrative team. Marianne has set up some opportunities with her current staff to look at structure, to look at schedule, to look at programming. We'll be talking about who will be teaching 5th grade. We will be continuing to have conversations with our parents. So I made sure as we were meeting as an administrative team that this should not be brand new to any parent this year. If you are, let's say, going into in a year's time, you're going to have a 5th grader, we should not be announcing this at the end of the year. It should be ongoing. And I have been told by the team that parents have been kept in the loop all along, but we will continue to share this message. We'll also probably do a Q&A to kind of explain the rationale why this is a good thing for kids. To change now. That way the community is aware of that. So that's our 3rd goal. 4th goal, we are going to be partnering with, I want to make sure I don't mess up his name, Paul Ovenbog from Franklin, Essex, Hamilton, BOCES. And he actually has kind of a neat job. He goes around to districts across the state to do transportation studies. And so I met with him and Adam 2 weeks ago to take a look at what is going to be the scope of our work. And he's going to be in district on Monday and Tuesday to start to look at our morning and afternoon drop off. But we're really going to have him look at our current routes, look at our schedules, look at our staffing, look at how we use our resources. And I really want to hear from his perspective what's working well, but then where could we be a little more efficient? So he will be doing the study starting next week, and then we will have a board presentation. I believe it's on December 2nd on this. That'll give us plenty of time if we decide, if the board decides to then go out, if we're going to make any changes to how far we transport, how many miles, that type of thing. We'll have to do a little bit of work with the community on that, but we have plenty of time to do that if the study is completed by December. And the last goal, I'm excited about all of them, but I'm really, really excited about this because this is such a wonderful connection to our students. So the Haldane Essentials, as you know, was created really building upon the work of the Strategic Coherence Plan, and many of you were involved in that. That's some really good thinking around what does our district stand for. The Haldane Essentials was a piece of that. This New York State has created something called a Portrait of a Graduate, and that's basically identifying what are the skills and attributes that we want all of our students, regardless of where they graduate from high school. What do we want all students in New York State to have so they can go on and be successful in career, college, trade, or something in between? And so what I'm really challenging in a creative way this year at the district is to look at how can we empower our students through the Haldane Essentials, making connections to the Portrait of a Graduate, looking at curriculum, looking at where we're really nicely aligned. And again, where are those future opportunities for rigor, for maybe more focus on a certain area? And so last week we had all of the faculty kind of do a quick crosswalk comparing Haldane Essentials to the Portrait of a Graduate. They identified where we are actually doing that already. We also asked them, how can we celebrate this work? So I really want to make sure on a monthly basis we are highlighting one of the Haldane Essentials for the school community as well. So this will be an ongoing goal, but to me, it's really our umbrella by which everything else should kind of fall under. I talked a little bit with the teachers about fatigue when it comes to initiatives. So any educators in the room, you probably have heard of this initiative fatigue. I don't want anything to feel completely brand new. It really should all be nicely aligned. And this goal is where I'm going to land us always when we're talking about students, when we're talking about their needs, and we're talking about any type of future planning. So these are our 5 goals. We have a lot to do, looking forward to it. And there is a lot of excitement around this goal in particular, which is nice to see. And that might be it for now. Any questions at all on the goals?
No, I think the only thing I would want to point out is that one of the things with you joining us this year that the board and the superintendent discussed as part of our retreat, not, was sort of how we want to do our district goals, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, with being shared goals between the district and the board, with people having separate goals, with being a shared set and separate goals. And where we landed as collectively as a group was really, I think, building off, to me, what I want to hear from others as well, but what felt really like a good approach, which is these are district goals, these are shared goals. And so the board didn't need to have a separate set of goals that said we're going to support the district in doing these things. That, de facto is our job, is to make sure that to support you in that work, and then to make sure that that the budget reflects that and policies reflect that, and that the resources are available to achieve those goals. So, you know,
Well, I tend to agree. I mean, I was thinking as we started this meeting, where we stood last year at this time and how many very specific goals that we had, looking for a new superintendent and the vote. And I feel like it's in our best interest to, keep it as simple as possible this year as we support you, as you're learning about our district and taking leadership over that district. It gives us opportunity, I think, throughout to assess based on, what you have laid out plainly for us, how we are all doing. The only thing that sometimes having those board goals in support of those is that it just gives us a lens through which we understand how we're going to go about assessing them. But I think based on the 5 that we have, that you have put together for us, I don't feel like there's any clear or obvious way in which we want to directly be thinking about assessment. I think it's an ongoing process. So I think that's a great way to think about it this year in particular.
well, one of the things I think, so in terms of doing our own board self-evaluation, is maybe when we meet mid-year privately, before we meet with Dr. Duffy for that informal mid-year evaluation, right? Because would be to think about our own, just sort of use that as an opportunity. Although that's actually something that's also supposed to take place in open meetings. So maybe I need to think about that a little bit more. That's not really an executive session conversation, but why don't we should think about that. And maybe the time to do that is to take a look. We've cut down the number of meetings we have in November and December. So we don't want those meetings to become too long, but it could be that it would be one of those meetings or early in January would be the opportunity for us to think about, is there anything else differently that we can.
Got a question.
Sure.
Simple, one that I think will be helpful if you kind of explain it to me. So we just appointed a transportation consultant. We have another consultant running a transportation study. Can you just kind of explain those 2 separate buckets for me, just so I get it?
Sure.
Thanks.
So Paul and his role through BOCES is service or provide services for districts to get a sense of if you own your own transportation and you have your own routes, what's working, what's not working. So he will kind of lay that groundwork and go on the buses, kind of get a sense of where we're at with things. He will then make recommendations based upon his many years in the field on best practices, making sure we're following the state law, that type of thing. Liz coming in as the consultant will be kind of his go-to person on Haldane transportation. But in addition to her providing some support there, she will be mentoring our director of facilities on the interim basis because he does not have as much experience in transportation. She'll be helping with the day-to-day flow of the office that the transportation consultant will not be involved in. And she'll also kind of be helping with, there's a lot of people to manage. So like even best practices in management of someone who's working for a transportation department. So I kind of see Liz and Paul working hand in hand, but Paul will do kind of the nitty gritty of the actual recommendations to the board on what we might consider for changes. Liz is providing some support, but then also helping with other things.
But Liz also needs to learn our system too, right?
Yes.
So
Liz, I should have mentioned before, when Adam first started, she also provided a little support to Haldane, not in a consulting capacity, but she was a resource that Adam would call.
okay.
She's a little familiar, but you're right. She does have to learn the Haldane way first before she makes any recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
And so Ezra raised a good question. I mean, part of her job really, so she's not making the she's not doing the transportation study. She's a liaison to the person who's doing the transportation study. And that's part of her role. But I guess I feel like I might phrase it a little bit differently and tell me if you think I'm wrong, is that her primary responsibility is to oversee the day-to-day operations of the transportation department here in this district in these first few months of the school year until we can hire someone new, and then possibly that person might even need some additional support as well.
Right.
It's interesting. I don't think the public knows, or maybe people do, is that what a big deal transportation is. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of infrastructure, and it's a really, really important undertaking that of the districts, because people who rely on buses are relying on the district to get their children to and from school safely.
And on time.
And on
Timely,
time,
yes.
time and you know, it's a big area with complicated, not like the world's most complicated roads, but like, you know, a somewhat tricky landscape. So I think that's how I've been thinking about it, right? Is that Liz coming in and really her primary responsibility is to support the day-to-day operations of transportation here at the district. And the secondary responsibility is to serve as liaison to the transportation study.
You're saying the day to day, but she's not working every day, right? But like she'll have,
Yeah.
and she doesn't need to because we also have the,
We have our
the facilities,
dispatcher,
yeah, and the
yes.
dispatcher who's doing that.
And it's really, again, I always look at an opportunity when we have a new hire. Let's take a pause, especially if you have facilities and transportation in your title. It's really two different departments. So this is a nice opportunity to take a pause and see what's working, what can we make changes to if that's needed.
Right.
Mhm.
Right, because I'm trying to think historically, and I think even with Tim, we have a history. I think since the director before Tim as well. So I want to say going back to 6 or 7 years of hiring directors of facilities and transportation who really what their experience is director of facilities. Correct. And then the transportation piece comes, and I think for very good reasons can present a real learning curve.
Absolutely.
If I'm remembering correctly. So yeah.
Well, and I appreciate the detail, and I think being a goal, I think this level of discussion is nice for, you know, for all these goals that we had. And I had actually emailed you today just to, you know, with questions when I saw that the contracts were going to be put on the agenda, sort of it felt last minute with these questions that we have, because it is a complicated thing, the transportation, but we are, you know, a relatively small district. So hearing the detail just helps, you know, helps us realize why it's a goal and kind of what goes into it. And that it's being done as thoroughly as possible. So it's exciting to me. I don't know, transportation, to get that study back, you know, about this different route.
Yeah, really. It would be nice to think about. It's so pretty. I don't know how. I can't imagine getting the public really excited to come in for an event about transportation, but I think we should think creatively about how to get people to weigh in on what's most important to them, you know, like a handful of people, because we know a lot of people have access to the bus, but choose to drive their children to school. And it's a big investment of resources, and all districts in New York State have a significant, important challenge ahead of us to transition to electric buses. So.
Well, and it also can be just transportation in general can be really hairy, right?
Yes.
I think especially when you're adding routes, cutting routes. So I think it's just as good as long as this is ongoing discussion. I think.
Absolutely.
Has a huge impact on families.
Anyway,
Oh, you're fine. So
It's fine. I'm gonna touch. I won't touch any buttons. I warmed it up.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm in the way of the recording.
Our discussion of fund balance.
So it's a good
As those of you who have been around for the past few years know, where I start the presentation with where we finished last year, so we know where our starting point is. Our total fund equity at the end of June 2024 was $6.6 million. Of that, we had 3.6 million that was in reserved fund equity. We had our traditional $645,000 of our assigned appropriated fund balance that is used in case of needs to close a budget gap. And we had 563,000 of encumbrances. And that is expenses that were in 2024 but had not yet been billed. And so they get carried forward, leaving us with an unappropriated fund balance of $1.7 million. And as you know, we were over the 4% last year. We're trying to not have that this year. So what happens now is we look at where is that, how is that fund balance going to change this year? So we look at what our total revenues for 24-25 were and our total expenditures. And this year we happen to have expenditures over revenue of $750,000. The reason we have that is because of the planned use of the $1 million of the capital reserve for the capital project. So that shows as an expense in the general fund, but does not show as a revenue anywhere because it's being taken from our reserves. So that makes, if we go back, we had $6.6 million was our fund equity at 6/30/24. It is now down to 5.8 just because we reduced it by the $750,000. We currently have $2.6 million in our reserves. We have our $645,000 of appropriated fund balance. As of right now, we're carrying forward $485,000 in encumbrances for, will be used in the first couple months of the 25-26 school year, leaving us with an available fund balance of $2.1 million. We're allowed to have an undesignated fund balance of 4% of the current year's budget, and that is $1.2 million, leaving us right now with an excess fund balance of $905,000. This is again primarily due to increased interest income, a little bit of increase in tuition. It's the same things that are kind of unknowns. We were careful with our budgeting for interest income because the word was that rates were going to drop as the year went on, and they had not yet. So we have $905,000 that we're able to fund our reserves with. Over history, these are our reserves that we have been funding over the past 4 years, and my recommendations for what we do this year. We usually have to do a small use of reserves to cancel out the deficit in our cafeteria. I'm pleased to say this year we only need $50,000 to be able to do that. Nancy continues to do a wonderful job down there, and our lunch sales continue to increase. We don't know yet how the impact of free lunch for everyone will be for the year, but we don't anticipate that it will cause any more of a deficit in the lunch program. As you'll remember, last year we replaced the carpet on the turf, and that was $750,000. I am proposing that we put $300,000 back into our repair reserve in case it needs repairs. Again, this is something that we may have to move it to capital if it becomes a complete full replacement in the future, but it's a really great place to put some funds to start saving for the next time we have to replace the turf. Or for any other repairs that might happen in the district. I mean, we never know what we might need to repair in an annual basis. And then, as you'll remember from our May vote, we did restart the capital reserve fund. We are able to have up to $3 million in there right now. So I'm proposing that we take $600,000 of the available excess fund balance and start really building up that capital fund. Again, this can be used for a future capital referendum, or it could be used for something that if the capital referendum perchance goes over budget, or there's something that we just have to fund with district funds, it would be a place that we'd be able to pull that from. So that is my recommendation for this year of using the funds, and that will keep us at the 4% of allowable unrestricted fund balance. And then again, just a summary of it, $50,000 to the school lunch fund, $300,000 to our repair reserve, and $600,000 to our capital reserve. And then just, if you have any questions.
Can you remind us again of the procedure whereby you would make a decision about using the repair reserve versus the capital reserve in any given year?
Sure, a repair is exactly what it's called, a repair. If it's something that we're actually replacing something or putting in something completely new, you're unable to use your repair reserve for that. It has to be something that we're actually repairing. But if something went wrong with the turf and they just needed to come in and replace a piece of it or something like that, or if something went wrong with the boiler and we didn't need a new boiler, but we could repair it, but it was more than of an expense than we were expecting in our maintenance code line, you'd be able to use that. Using any reserve does require public hearings. You can use your repair reserve in an emergency. So if we have a true emergency, we could use it without a public hearing, but there's some restrictions on how you have to pay it back pretty much immediately, at least half within the same year, and funding it fully, the subsequent year.
Thank you.
What's EBALR?
Okay, that is our reserve for employee benefits accrued for after retirement. So we accrue every year a liability for unused sick time, unused vacation time, things like that, that employees are paid for. Sometimes in cash, sometimes with service credits or 403B payments or the donation. I don't want to call them donations. They're not contributions. Thank you. Word just wouldn't come. And so that is our reserve for that. And most of our other reserves, as you'll remember, we were trying to use up a lot. We had a lot of excess fund balance last year, and we weren't able to put anything into capital because we needed to renew the capital. So we gave a lot of love to our reserves last year.
That's right.
So we're very comfortably funded in the other reserves. The places that we, absolutely need is to cover this year's lunch deficit, and then to really start rebuilding our repair and our capital fund is a good use of excess reserves this year, in my opinion.
And actually, Catherine, you can't, we could theoretically move money from repair to capital. I assume it would require a vote of some sort or something.
It would go back the way that we did that with the turf, where we had to get permission to move it, and then we had to get permission to then use it.
Okay, all right, I forgot that.
But it's a really good spot to start rebuilding some funds for any possible upcoming repairs.
Well, we know there's still a lot in the district that does need to be repaired, like a lot. So this is great.
Okay. And if something, like I said, becomes an emergency, we can use it we're hoping for not to have to do that, but we are able to. And so it would be nice to have some money in there that would be available, because your capital reserve requires a vote to be able to use that. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I said it from my seat in the audience, but I'll say it again. Thanks very much to Catherine for thinking through this so carefully, for the really clear presentation. It's we only do this once a year, and so it's really very helpful to have it all laid out, be reminded, as well as to remind the public, what's at hand. And so we appreciate that. So now, given that we've had our presentation of the recommendation for the fund balance, now it's up to the board to authorize this recommended use. And so may we please have the recommended action?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the use of excess fund balance for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2025 in the following manner. Transfer to school lunch fund, $50,000. Transfer to repair reserve, $300,000. Transfer to capital reserve, $600,000.
May we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're at the end of our meeting. Any board reflections before we wrap up?
Just want to say my kids came home absolutely stoked about this day, which was really nice. And I heard that Dr. Duffy was seen everywhere around the building, which is great. Glad you're really jumping in.
Congratulations.
Thank
on
you.
the first day.
Great first day.
Exciting. Feels like we've been building for this for a long time. All right, anything else for anyone?
Well, I guess just to kind of reiterate what I said before, we think about it year over year, I feel like moving into this year, it feels good to know that so many of the essential parts of the infrastructure for leadership are in place and that we're here to support you and in your success for the year. So I feel like we're poised to do that. You seem poised to receive it. So there we go.
Do you have anything that you want to add?
Looking forward to tomorrow. Welcome everyone back for day 2.
All right. I move to adjourn the meeting. May we have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.